Good morning and welcome to this week's Grow, where we gather to recharge, organize, and work here as members of MWAG. We're glad that you are joining us this morning as we are going to be talking about PEPFAR, which is the President's Emergency Relief. Oh my gosh, I practiced this and then I didn't. It is AIDS relief for um, for international relief. Anyway, I really botched that. So thank you for being here. I'm going to turn the time over to Jill Fairholm, who is on our advocacy team, and Allie Leafling, who she and her daughters made the documentary that we mentioned in the description of today's Grow with the link. If you want to, after the Grow, you can go back and watch that. And I'm just going to let them talk about PEPFAR and some advocacy things that we could do as members, our CTA, and those things. So I'm going to turn the time over to them.
Well, then I will go ahead and get us started really quickly. PEPFAR is something that we decided to work with a few months ago and have been advocating for. The presidential fundings for AIDS relief was initiated first in 2003. It's really been this gold standard international development initiative. Has broad bipartisan support and has done a lot of good. It's saved over 26 million lives. And at the start of this year, with everything happening with foreign aid and USAID, there were a lot of concerns about what was going to happen to PEPFAR and how the program was going to continue. I will just start with the reason this program is so important and the continuation of it is so important is because HIV treatment is a continuous process. It requires medication to be taken every day in order to be treated and to have that viral load suppressed. So we really felt strongly that PEPFAR was something that we could support. It has received broad support in the past, and we've had CTAs about it, and we've published library pieces about it. And so that's kind of what MWIC's done. But we've also want to highlight some of the work that our members have done, and Allie and her daughters have done really incredible advocacy work creating this documentary that we have in the link of the description for this Grow that I would encourage all of you to watch, where it gives a great description of HIV/AIDS, of the work PEPFAR has done, and sharing personal stories. So this has been incredibly impactful, and we want to highlight this great advocacy work and how they have been so impactful with their needs. So I will go ahead and let Allie introduce yourself. Allie, do you want to maybe go ahead and talk about the background of what inspired you to create this documentary and how this process started?
Yeah, sure. I just want to start off with thanking everyone. And I'm really inspired, Joe, by you and others that have already been doing this a lot longer than we have. We really kind of opened our eyes really this summer of this year to what an amazing program PEPFAR is. And so how did we get into this? Let me just introduce myself really briefly. I'm a business immigration attorney. This is not my field of expertise whatsoever. We went to Kenya 2 years ago on a church trip to do work with the orphanage in Kenya and Mathare slums, which is I think it's the second worst slum in the world, aside from one in India. It's massive. It's very overwhelming. And our first trip 2 years ago, we would pass medication out and help. We had a medical clinic. We had no idea what the medication was for until we kind of were just taught that it's AIDS medication because most of the women living in this Mathare slum have AIDS and usually contracted AIDS from their husbands or they've been raped. It's really a dire situation with a lot of women who don't have a lot of economic power or social power. A lot of it is very hopeless. So that really was very impactful for me and my girls. So my girls are, at the time, I think they were 14 and 16. And so for, a young girl coming from the West into that situation was pretty shocking for them. And I think kind of just left an impact. just how really 99% of the world, well, not 99%, but a lot of people live a lot worse than we do. So that was that trip. It was just kind of a simple humanitarian trip. And then this last summer, we were going to go back to Kenya, but we're watching the news and kind of hearing through the grapevine that they were cutting, like everyone else, USAID, especially PEPFAR. And at that point, we really didn't know what PEPFAR was exactly, but we knew that there was a connection to the drugs that we were handing out in Kenya. And so we kind of just did a deep dive into, the program, how it really is being impacted on the ground in Kenya, how it was going to be impacted. We were only finding this news through, third party news sites. So we really didn't know how it was really impacting. So we kind of contacted our director who took us last time and said, hey, instead of us focusing on, volunteering in the orphanage, could we start interviewing people on the ground in Kenya to see how PEPFAR really has been impacted and to talk to the people that we had met 2 years earlier. And it really just ballooned from there. Honestly, it was a God thing, this project for sure. Um, Ironically, one of the major leaders of coming up with one of the, it's a one-time shot actually, who came up with, instead of how you said, Jill, that they have to take it daily. Now the next uh, form of drug is injection. And the person who was behind that actually works at the University of Utah. And so we interviewed him, and that was amazing. Kind of really started the big snowball. And then we started interviewing the man who's in charge of AIDS in Utah. And then when we went to Kenya, we just started interviewing people in Mathare and doctors, nurses, people that worked for PEPFAR. A lot of them didn't want to talk to us because obviously, they were afraid of either losing their jobs or, it's very political. So we had a lot of interviews behind the scenes. Also, there's a lot of fear, cultural fear. A lot of these women don't want to be interviewed because there's a lot of social stigma of having AIDS. A lot of these women really wouldn't even get their medication in the location where they lived. They would ask the friend of a friend to go to the next city to get drugs so that no one would know they had AIDS. So there's multiple layers of difficulty in getting kind of the truth. But, we put this documentary together really for the purpose of giving it to the senators because we knew that there were going to be some important votes happening literally weeks before we came back. And we kind of rushed the documentary through. It's a very it's rushed. It's not polished, but we did it in a week. We interviewed lots of amazing scientists. That was very political. Unfortunately, we got a lot of kickback from that, but in the end, I really do think it pushed the needle because we were able to have lots of interviews with senators. In Maine and also in Utah. And, I'm not really sure how much, we pushed it, but I think I'd like to believe that, it was on a lot of people's radars and it actually, I think, in the end or something pushed it across the finish line so that PEPFAR wasn't in one of those rescission cuts over the summer. Bill Gates had actually watched the video and they're going to be publishing an article about PEPFAR and its impact in Kenya. So we're really, really excited about that.
Thank you so much for sharing. It is so great to hear more of this process from your side, because from our perspective, we started working with PEPFAR in January, and we're a little bit before January in the fall. And we were working on the reauthorization, and then that didn't happen. And so we were trying to figure out the next step, and we kept meeting with offices and hearing, do you have any stories on the ground? They wanted to hear the voices of these women. They wanted to know what was happening, and the people that were being impacted. And so then when you sent us this video that you guys had put together that had all of these great experts who you talked to, and that you had personal stories and connections. It was really, really powerful to us, and we knew that we wanted to help amplify this. And the timing, was one of those things that was just really wonderful. With the earlier rescission bill that was in June, PEPFAR was on the docket to lose significant amount of funding. And over the course of several weeks and with several advocates who were really strongly pushing for that to be removed, it was eventually taken out of the rescission bill. So even though the rest of that passed, PEPFAR funding remained protected. So I thank you so much for all of the work you've done and the diligence and the fact checking that you guys did. I think that the timing of this and how powerful, how careful and methodical you were about pushing your voices forward and highlighting the voices of those who needed to be highlighted. It was all just made it very, very powerful and impactful. And you really are reaching the people that needed to be reached. You mentioned that several senators have seen it. What have your engagement with offices been like? What has that experience been like for you? Would love to hear more about that.
Yeah, I mean, Jill, it sounds like you know more about this than I do. Ironically, as a lawyer, I don't really talk to senators' offices on a regular basis. So it was kind of honestly, a depressing experience. I reached out, I didn't reach out to Mike, because I didn't think he was going to bite. So it was mostly Senator Curtis's office. And I think he had one aide, and then they recently hired another one. And I kept on pushing him. I think I emailed him 5 times. And in my fifth email, I actually said, as a lawyer trying to teach my daughters how to connect to their representatives, this has been a super depressing, experiment for them. And he actually responded to me. And at that point, he was like, okay, reach my colleague. She's in charge. We just hired her. She's in charge of global outreach and health. And she was just so lovely. She had just come back from Africa the day before we had an interview with her. And so she said, there wasn't one moment where I was in Africa where PEPFAR wasn't brought up. And it was like you said, Jill, a timing thing. It was almost as if this project had to happen. I'm not sure why. But she and I just, all of us linked very closely. And she said, tonight we're going to have a meeting with the senator, and they talked about this video. And then the senator, I think, talked to the office in Maine that was kind of having these meetings, and he said, I'm not on board with this if PEPFAR is in it. And it was just, one thing after another. And like you said, Jill, it is such a bipartisan, really in this time and era, so rare to find something, that both sides agree with. And so, I don't know what it was, but it was good timing is what it was. And it was happening all at the same time.
It was good timing and it was hard work, and you really connected with a lot of people that needed to have their voices shared, I think. And that persistence is really important in advocacy because it can be very discouraging. But they will listen. They are listening. So I'm really grateful that you were able to continue to push and engage, because I know that it's made a big impact. And it does. I think that when they see the dedication and the interest, our representatives really listen and look forward to that. Um, so that is just really wonderful. Um, what do you think, like pushing forward, do you want to continue working with this documentary? Are you going to continue advocating in that way? PEPFAR is an ongoing issue. I'll just give a brief synopsis for everyone. Um, so PEPFAR is like written into law. It is still a program that will happen as long as it is funded. And so we're looking at 2026 funding, making sure that it has everything that it needs to be supported for the upcoming year. It also still needs to be reauthorized. The reauthorization is just a few time provisions that they've expired, but people are pushing to like maybe include them. So it's not the whole program, but there are portions of it that are not fully operational right now. Um, So it's still really important to engage with this. We have a couple library pieces written on PEPFAR, and we currently have a CTA for that if anyone wants more information. Um, so that's just our really brief synopsis of what we're looking forward to, is looking at the 2026 funding and looking at how we can continue to make sure that PEPFAR is at the front of our representatives' minds. What are you looking at, Allie? What are you and your daughters considering?
Yeah, so we just actually this week finished writing an article with the Bill Gates Foundation. They're going to be publishing it. I think it's coming out at the end of this week. And I know that Bill is writing an article for Time Magazine, that's coming out in the next 2 months, and he'll be talking about this. So we're really excited about that. Um, Honestly, I think PEPFAR is at its end because of lenacapavir and injectables. And I think that's where AIDS treatment is going. And I'm so excited about it. I mean, if PEPFAR ends because we're able to give people an injectable once a year, I mean, that is a good thing. And so I think honestly, I see the end of this in the next 5 years as injectables going across the world. And so you don't have to take a daily pill. It's a one-time shot every year. That's absolutely amazing. Closest we've ever been to a vaccine and AIDS treatment ever. So I'm really excited about that. I think it's going to require a lot of money. I think there is a lot of private money that's backing that, right? So I think we're kind of just waiting to see how the private sphere jumps in on this. I know Gates Foundation has a lot in store. I know it's all in the works though. So we're kind of just waiting to see how that works. But I really feel such hope in this area, especially the science, because it's there. And it really truly is a miracle that we're at this point after so many decades of research.
Yeah, the hope that there's we're even closer to a cure for AIDS. We're even closer to treatment and improving that. That is just so meaningful right now. And it causes hope for so many thousands and thousands of individuals, millions of people who are struggling with this. And it is exciting to see how we could potentially transition and help people to feel better supported and to be healthy. So that is really wonderful. And that is really great that you are so engaged with the Gates Foundation and are working with them and hearing about mentioning with your documentary. That is really exciting. Um, I don't have any further questions. Are you open to a Q&A, Allie, or do you want
Of
to?
course.
Okay, great. So if anyone has any questions for Allie to talk about the documentary or her process and experience, that would be great.
I don't see any questions in the chat. If you're brave, you can just come off camera, off microphone. We are happy to take any questions. One thing that I was thinking about is um, with the cuts in funding to USAID, we were talking about private, is it just going to be private funding for this to keep this program specifically? How will that look if it's just a once a year? Do you think it'll just be trips, like, or they'll just be able to cut back on staff,
Yeah,
like how that would be effective?
I think it's really complicated. From what I've talked to a lot of people, I don't even think the government itself knows how the future will look. I know there's even cuts in Kenya, in even to their healthcare services. So I think everyone's kind of looking to see what backup plans there are, which there really wasn't any, right? So on one hand, there's so much excitement that PEPFAR is continuing, but the other side, that's the other flip of the coin, is that USAID is cut. And really, it wasn't the issue that there weren't medication, it was that the issue there wasn't any staff. And there wasn't any computers and there wasn't, and so if you're cutting USAID and that was the prime vehicle in which the drugs are given out, then the system really is going to crumble anyways. But ironically, because of lenacapavir coming out at the same time, I'm wondering if it will be easier because you won't need as much staff happening every day. So I think it's going to be really interesting how this rolls out over the next 6 months to a year. I know that Gilead, is trying to figure out, from a government standpoint, how are they going to USAID? Is it going to be through private ways? I'm definitely following them to see how they're going to, launch lenacapavir. It's also extremely expensive. So, I don't know if they're going to be cutting costs for people in third world countries. It's going to be a lot of interesting things coming up.
Yeah, that'll definitely be something for, people who are on this to keep an eye on. We invite our members to kind of keep an eye on this, and MWAG, of course, through our calls to action and through the advocacy work that we're doing, we'll do our best to keep an update on how this goes forward with the new medications and funding. Ali, thank you so much to you and your daughters for putting the documentary together. Again, I would recommend it. I don't have the link, but I'll put it in the comments on MWAG Central with the video. It's just about 30 minutes, just under 30 minutes, and you have people who are participating in the program, and just it's a great peek into how this is helping people in other countries. Oh, Jill put it in the comments. So yeah, just take a few minutes and watch that, and just to get an idea of the type of people and communities that this program's helping, and that these medications are and how they're affecting them. Thank you for joining us today on our Grow, and just giving us a little bit of information about your experience and the program and what's to come. There is exciting things coming down the way that hopefully we can keep getting support from our representatives to fund this. So thank you, Ali. Thanks to your daughters. Thanks, Jill, for being here. And thanks everybody else. And we'll see you guys next week. Have a good day.